Let's talk about some things about Mars. The first rover to land on Mars was the Sojourner, which is part of the Mars Pathfinder mission. After a 7-month journey, Sojourner was dropped off at the Ares Vallis on July 4th, 1997. And once it landed, its goal was simple: explore Mars' surface and calculate the data of the atmosphere. Another main reason why Sojourner was launched was that NASA wanted to prove that they could produce a faster, better, and cheaper way to make a spacecraft. This would end up being true because the Pathfinder mission ended up being much faster and less costly to carry out than previous missions. In the morning of October 7th, 1997, Sojourner sent out its final signal. NASA signaled the rover to head to the lander base, but there was no indication if it ever made it or not. The next rover on Mars was Spirit. Over 5 years after the Sojourner essentially just died, the Spirit rover was next in line and launched on June 10th, 2003. After another 7-month trip, it landed on Mars in January of 2004. Spirit landed inside of the Gusev crater with its core objective being find evidence of past water on Mars. And guess what? One of the first major discoveries by the Spirit rover was the detection of carbon materials inside of various rocks, which suggests that warm water used to be a thing inside of the planet. Spirit would later detect a, quote, water signature material called goethite inside of Martian bedrock. Anyway, 7 years after landing on Mars, Spirit would get its communication cut off by NASA on May 25th, 2011. So that's enough of rovers. Let's talk about, wait, hold on, I need to think.
Here is a list of topics to talk about for your Mars video.
Let's talk about some Martian moons. Mars has 2 moons, Deimos and its close orbiting moon, Phobos. Deimos has a diameter of 12.4 kilometers and takes about 30 hours to orbit Mars. Phobos is slightly larger at 22.2 kilometers in diameter and can orbit Mars 3 times in one day. Mars has the largest mountain in the solar system called Olympus Mons, which is named after the Greek mountain, Mount Olympus. It's roughly the same size as Poland, and its highest elevation being 21.9 kilometers. Anyway, the most recent rover sent to Mars was the Perseverance, which launched on July 30th, 2020. Perseverance took, you guessed it, another roughly 7-month trip and landed within the Jezero crater on February 18th, 2021. Hey, that's just 4 days after my channel was created. Perseverance's goal is to find evidence of ancient life and collect rock samples to keep if it ever returns to Earth. So far, Perseverance has done a lot. Here's some highlights. It found volcanic rocks in the crater where it landed. Some scientists think that the crater used to be some sort of lava flow that caused the rocks to be put there, while others suggest that it could have just been the wind that moved them. The other highlight is less of a finding and more just interesting. Perseverance has managed to record a 24-hour-long playlist of sounds on Mars. Scientists noticed that when listening to the sound that it played much slower than it is here on Earth. This is due to the planet's thin atmosphere that is mostly made up of carbon dioxide, which slows down the speed of sound. Anyway, that's it about Mars. I got nothing else to say other than happy July, or June if I'm lucky, and enjoy your summer. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are the 8 planets in the solar system. You should know this. However, some of you born prior to 2006 might remember Pluto being the 9th planet. Except for me, because I was born in 08. The reason why it's no longer considered one is because this little organization called the IAU decided to redefine what a planet is. If you've seen my somewhat recent short, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I'll just repeat the requirements here. 1. The object must orbit a star. 2. It must be big enough that its gravity makes itself round. And 3. Its orbit must be cleared of any objects similar in size. Pluto manages to complete the first 2 requirements, but not the last. Also, I should mention that the IAU found similar-sized objects to Pluto in this region, the Kuiper Belt, so that's what sparked all of this. Anyway, here we go. Alright, let's get this one out of the way. Pluto. Pluto was discovered in February 1930 by Claude Tombaugh, an American astronomer who found the 9th planet while comparing some space photos and noticed an object moving across the backdrop of stars and figured out that it was a planet. The name for Pluto was actually given by an 11-year-old girl named Venetia Burney, who was born in 1918. Fun fact, did you know it takes Pluto 248 years to orbit the Sun? That means from the time it was discovered to the time it was demoted, Pluto is only 31% of its orbit. And if you want to continue going, it won't complete its orbit until 2178. I think I might be a tad bit dead by then, but who knows. Ceres is actually the only main dwarf planet to be located inside of the asteroid belt. It was discovered in 1801 by a Sicilian man when he was looking for some stars but saw Ceres instead. Hey, that rhymed. Its diameter is 952 kilometers, or roughly the distance between the city of London to the city of Copenhagen. Finally, my solar system Lego model is officially complete, if only it was to scale. Throughout its history, Ceres is called a planet, but also an asteroid. From the early 19th century to the late 19th century, various other planets were found and were called Pallas, Juno, and Vesta. With these, along with many more asteroids being found, their planet statuses got diminished into asteroid status. Except for Ceres, it still remained as a planet until 2006. If you have looked at an image of it, you might have noticed these white spots. Well, they're actually salt reservoirs, which are about 25 miles deep. And if you're wondering about the length, according to this NASA source, they wrote it down as hundreds of miles wide, which is not a proper answer. Jumping back to the Kuiper Belt, the next dwarf planet in line is Haumea. Haumea was discovered back in the early 2000s, and the first person to actually spot it remains controversial because both astronomers Michael E. Brown and Jose Ortiz claim that they were both the first. One thing you'll notice about Haumea is that it's oval-shaped. This is due to its fast rotation. An average day on the planet is simply 4 hours, or just under the time it would take to watch all 3 SpongeBob movies back to back.
Are you crazy? I was just gonna tell you that your fire's down!
A cool fact about Haumea is that it's the only known dwarf planet to have a ring system. Little is known about the rings, but they were discovered in 2017 as scientists watched Haumea pass in front of a distant star. Oh, and I guess it has 2 moons, Namaka and Hayaka, both named after Hawaiian gods. Namaka being the goddess of the sea, and Hayaka being the goddess of hula dancers, chant, sorcery, and medicine. The fourth dwarf planet from the sun is Maki Maki, and it was discovered in March 2005 by Michael Brown. Again. And it was given the designation of 2005 FY9, until it was later given the name of Maki Maki in July 2008. Maki Maki is located around 6.8 billion kilometers away from the sun, and has 1 moon, S2015 136472, or unofficially named MK2. MK2 was discovered back in April 2015, which was 9 years ago. 9 years ago? 9 years ago? What the Anyway, discovered in 2015, MK2 is the only discovered moon of Maki Maki, and is around 175 kilometers in diameter. The final dwarf planet in our solar system is Eris, and the discovery of this thing was the whole reason why Pluto got demoted in the first place. You see, back in January of 2005, our good old friend Michael E. Brown discovered Eris, but at the same time, it was given the nickname Zeneb after some sort of TV show character. It turned out that Eris was slightly smaller than Pluto, however its mass was a bit larger. This would cause a few months of debate on what a planet actually is, and finally in August of 2006, the IAU voted on a new definition, and that officially kicks Pluto out of the Planet Club. Also, it was at this point when the name Xena was changed to Eris, and its moon was changed to Dysnomia. Eris is named after the Greek god of discord. No, not that one. Discord meaning disagreement, and Dysnomia, which means lawlessness, which also happens to be the daughter of Eris. I don't know if you picked up on this yet, but the majority of our planets and dwarf planets are named after various gods, and their moons are simply just the childs of those gods. I'll leave there just some of the dwarf planets, and there's actually a lot more, and some of them are just candidates. I was going to name them, but this video is getting too long, so I'll just play them in an end card. Alright, So in previous space videos, I've talked about Mars and the 5 dwarf planets. In this video, however, I think we should leave our solar system and talk about exoplanets, which the term basically means any planet that exists outside of our solar system. But because of the stupid amount of exoplanets that exist, I'll just choose 4 planets at random and then talk about those. One thing I should preface before we go right in is that exoplanet studies are still relatively new, the first one being discovered in the early 90s, and also some planets that I'll be talking about today may or may not be 100% confirmed as the data is still being developed as we speak, but for the sake of content, I'll talk about them anyway. Kepler 452b was announced in July 2015 by NASA using the transit method of discovery. This method is basically viewing a planet or celestial body as it passes in front of its host star, which in turn causes the emitted light from said star to dim a little bit. And while we're talking about it, the transit method is basically the most common and effective method of discovery, so that's pretty cool, I think. Anyway, 452b is fairly similar to Earth and is currently believed to lie within the habitable zone of its host star, meaning it may have the potential to harbor life. Located 1,400 light years away from us, 452b orbits a G-type main sequence star, which is the same as our Sun, and also has 5 times the mass of Earth. 452b's orbit is only 20 days longer than ours at 385 days, however the length of a day on this planet is currently unknown. Because 452b stars towards the end of its lifespan and giving off more heat, the planet is likely experiencing a greenhouse effect, which causes its surface to reach around 17 degrees Celsius, and is probably going to get hotter and hotter over time. However, if the planet has an ocean, that along with its volcanic activity, due to its higher mass and density, that could help slow down this rapid heating by forming a carbon-silicon cycle. I have no idea what it is, go look it up, which could delay this process for around 500 million years. Moving on. Discovered a long time ago in the era of January 2024, astronomers discovered this planet in the constellation Gemini called HD 63433d. What's interesting about this planet is that it's totally locked to its star that it's really close to, and has extreme weather on either side. HD orbits its star at around 0.05 astronomical units, or 1/20th the distance from the Earth to the Sun, which is horrendously close, as Mercury's distance is only 1/3 the distance of Earth and the Sun. And the distance gives the planet a 4-day orbital cycle. So the front side of this planet is scorching hot at over 1,200 degrees Celsius and is believed to be covered in lava and magma and has possibly a lot of volcanic activity. But conversely, the dark side of this planet is believed to be as cold as the dwarf planet Pluto, which is freezing cold at negative 230 degrees Celsius. The cold side of the planet also probably has a bunch of like frozen nitrogen glaciers moving about. So if you want to visit the real life equivalent to hell as possible, I recommend visiting HD. PSR B1620, nicknamed Methuselah after the longest living biblical figure according to various religion, is one of, if not the oldest exoplanets discovered, believed to be over 12 billion years old. Located over 12,000 light years away in the constellation of Scorpius to the right of Antares, Methuselah orbits a set of binary stars, one being a white dwarf and the other being a pulsar. A pulsar is a type of neutron star that rotates like really fast and is very magnetic, and this specific star is slightly larger than our sun and is believed to rotate around over 100 times a second. Given the fact it orbits a neutron star, how did Methuselah survive the supernova that created it? The answer, it probably didn't. Although uncertain, scientists think that Methuselah originated in its own solar system within the M4 cluster of stars until it traveled through the core of a cluster where it attracted a neutron star and its companion. After a lot of spinning around each other, rest in peace the companion, the original star swelled up into a supergiant, somehow avoiding Methuselah, then became a dwarf, and the neutron star kept spinning around it into a pulsar, and they lived happily ever after. Alright, the final planet we'll look at today is TOI 1452b, which is believed to be a planet completely covered in water. TOI was discovered in July 2022 at the University of Montreal, and data suggests that it is an ocean world candidate and is 70% larger than Earth and 5 times more massive. As you probably know, Earth is covered in 70% water, but that only accounts for less than 1% of its mass. On this planet, though, we're actually unsure, but based on the fact that it has a lot of water, probably, it could have oceans tens of hundreds of kilometers deep. Also, I would recommend going swimming in the water here, as the surface temperature is over 50 degrees Celsius. So I just recommend sticking to your regular beach or swimming pool. So those are the 4 exoplanets that I thought were interesting and wanted to share with you guys today. And I'm thinking for whenever the next outer space video releases, I'll talk about some stars or some black holes or some other massive stuff. But my next video will probably be like politics or something like that. I don't know. I'm thinking about the idea. Alright, see ya.